This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
One person killed in South Africa following student protest. Libyan parliament approves interim unity government, a key step to elections. And China's top advisory body concludes nearly a week of deliberations. To what extent did Africa feature? We will tell you more. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe and joining me with the business headlines is Uche.
Thank you, Peninah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live. South African mining companies are set for a rebound through acquisitions. And Ghana's Nana Akufo-Addo promises to revive the economy as he begins his new term in office. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you.
Thank you, Uche. We begin the hour in South Africa, where at least one person has died after police fired rubber bullets to disperse a group of protesters at the University of the Witwatersrand, or Wits, in Johannesburg. Students at the university have been demanding that those who owe the university large arrears in fees be allowed to register for the new academic year. The cost of university education, which is still prohibitive for many black students, has become a symbol of inequalities over 2 decades since the end of the apartheid. The identity of the dead middle-aged man is still unknown, but protest leaders said he is believed to be a student. The South African Police Oversight Body says it is probing the matter. Meanwhile, some students have accused the security officers of using excessive force.
We were protesting in the morning. Without warning, they launched a stunt grenade. After launching the stunt grenade, they would then fire rubber bullets. In the midst of firing rubber bullets, one of our colleagues was shot dead. And we are here at this point to honor and mourn the passing of that colleague.
Shooting people, fighting for their rights, fighting for education. Like, seriously, if I'm fighting for education, there's no money at home, you're going to shoot me. I think that's totally wrong.
On to Yemen now, where it is now emerging that at least 70 Ethiopian migrants were killed in a fire that broke out in a detention center in Sana'a on Sunday night. The center is under the control of Houthis, who have previously criticized the United Nations for failing to repatriate the migrants. The death toll is expected to rise since many are yet to be accounted for. Despite being at war, Yemen has been a major transit hub for migrants from the Horn of Africa, mainly Ethiopia and Eritrea, who travel to the Gulf in search of jobs. The Ethiopian government says it has embarked on repatriating survivors.
The
work of repatriating the survivors of this horrific incident is now ongoing, and UN agencies are working with us in order to achieve this. There are conflicting numbers regarding the number of Ethiopians killed in the prison fire. Our ambassador in the neighboring Oman told us the same. Some say it's 70, some 30, while others put the number of dead at more than that. We'll verify the number and swiftly announce it to the public as soon as possible.
The Libyan parliament has endorsed the interim government's formation. After a 3-day session, interim Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Deiba has accepted parliament's request to replace some of his cabinet candidates. However, the talks have revealed a number of political challenges that lie ahead. While initial reports say there was consensus over the endorsement, only around 2/3 of parliament members joined the talks. Here's Adel Mahri with more.
Libya's parliament endorsement session is finally over. After MPs raised concerns around Abdelhamid Dbeiba's proposed candidates for his cabinet, doubting the qualifications of some and the integrity of others, the interim prime minister accepted proposals to replace them. All 132 participating members of parliament have approved Dbeiba's final formation.
Endorsing the government is a matter of importance to all Libyans. Libyans are waiting to see the state's authorities united and to end parallel governments. A united government is essential for the country. We have listened to the interim prime minister and we have requested some changes which he didn't mind.
While the debate highlighted the possible democratic process Libya could achieve, It also revealed the extent of challenges Dbeibah's government is about to face.
There are many obstacles facing this government. Its formation should be done with a constitutional declaration, so it can be legal. There have been accusations of bribery during the voting for Dbeibah, and foreign interference in this process remains existent. The date for the elections isn't practical. We're a broken country. It's the youth who don't yet understand what these elections mean, and its people live under the poverty line. Elections will bring Islamists into leadership.
Around 38 members of parliament have boycotted the parliament session. While they didn't stand against the endorsement, it reflects, however, that there is opposition to the UN-sponsored political process. The parliament endorsement session is one of the longest and probably the healthiest political talks Libyans have seen. It has shifted the battle between rival factions from guns to debates under the legislative chamber. It has also revealed that there is a long way ahead on the political road to end the conflict. But more importantly, it has brought back hope that Libya could once again become united. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
China's top political advisors have wrapped up nearly a week of deliberations and proposals that cover areas from the economy to legislative reforms. Dong Shui with more.
At the closing session of the 13th CPPCC National Committee, Chairman Wang Yang said the body has fulfilled its duties this year by pursuing unity, democracy, and building consensus. He said the CPPCC has served to propel and improve people's well-being and advance social progress in China. Wang Yang made the remarks in a speech to about 2,000 national policy advisors at the close of the meeting. President Xi Jinping and other Chinese leaders were in attendance.
We as political advisors must make better use of the inclusiveness and diversity of the CPPCC to help promote government policies and let more people benefit from them. We must help build consensus in terms of developing the economy and forming new growth patterns. We'll do our part in building a modern socialist China.
As the 100th year since the founding of the Communist Party of China and the beginning of China's 14th five-year plan, Wang Yang said the CPPCC will strive to maintain political integrity through 2021. He added the body will work hard to continue building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. And he said the CPPCC will fulfill its dual responsibility by offering suggestions and building consensus. Apart from calling for a stronger role for the CPPCC in strengthening ties between political advisors and the people, Wang Yang also called for the body to play a key part in overseeing and implementing the 14th five-year plan. It's hoped these will increase opportunities for foreign investors across different sectors and drive China's growth for the next 5 years. Dong Shui, CGTN, Beijing.
Let's widen the discussion. We're joined by Ovigwe Egwegu, policy advisor at Development Reimagined, a pioneering international development consultancy. He joins us live via Zoom from Abuja. Ovigwe, having followed the whole two-session gathering, to what extent did Africa feature? Ovigwe, if you can hear me, I'm asking, having followed that whole two-session gathering, to what extent did Africa feature? All right, I think we're having some audio issues with that. We'll try and correct that and get back to him. Let's move on to Zambia. The ambassador to China says she firmly believes that the convening of the two sessions by China gave the Chinese people a platform to participate in their country's development agenda. According to Ambassador Winnie Chibe Sakunda, the Chinese government also has a chance to listen to people from the grassroots on how to craft and implement policies that will change their lives for the better. Chibe Sakunda also said she was impressed by development witnessed in rural areas in China.
There are so many things that Africa and Zambia in particular can learn from China on how they implemented these policies which have seen the country really move out of poverty. And so I can say that any Chinese can proudly, parade themselves because they have achieved what many countries cannot achieve within a short time. I wish to congratulate His Excellency President Xi Jinping, the central government, the people of China for this great and miraculous, poverty alleviation program, which has been achieved way ahead of time. It's admirable, and we hope that they can help us to achieve the same.
Let's revisit our story where the Libyan Parliament has induced the interim government's formation. After a 3-day session, interim Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Deiba has accepted Parliament's request to replace some of his cabinet candidates. However, the talks have revealed a number of political challenges that lie ahead. Let's get more on this story. Sarah Kira is a political analyst and director of European North Africa Center for Research, and she joins us now live from Cairo. Sarah, Libya's parliament has approved the formation of the interim unity government. How significant is this?
Hello, and thank you for having me. Well, to know how significant the new parliament is, we have to overview what happened in Libya for the past decade. What happened in Libya after a very legitimate revolution, people asking for a change, the state has went into chaos, and chaos led into division. And the division led into two different ideologies, one in the west, Western Libya, and one in the east. The east was led by the military, as we all know, and the west was led by a Muslim Brotherhood-led government. What happened today is, and why this new government, the unity government, first of all, the name of the government is very symbolic for the future that the Libyan aspire for their state, which is unity. So what's happening today is that the parliament has voted for a more united government with people in it who are more aspiring into the unity and more prosperous Libya and conflict-free Libya. So we are on the first step of resolving the Libyan crisis, and that's why today forming this government and voting for it in the Libyan parliament is very important, because we have witnessed two different parties in Libya fighting each other, the same people fighting each other because they have different ideologies and different approaches for their kind of authority. And we have seen the Western government asking for help from Turkey, who's not on a very good terms with another ally to the east, which is Egypt. So there has been a lot of division in the country, and regional powers were, and still are, of course, trying to influence this kind of conflict that we have been witnessing in Libya to their own interests. So today, the Libyans have decided to be united again and have their country again under control, and that's the first step of the UN peace process for Libya. So thankfully, we are witnessing today a state that...
Yeah, I was just going to interject there, Sarah, and ask what some of the challenges of the incoming administration will be for this incoming administration, which we know is expected to oversee elections in December. So what are some of the challenges they will be facing?
I think there will be a lot of challenges, because Libya is no easy crisis and is no easy conflict. Of course, there are already allegations of corruption to some of the governmental figures in Libya, and of course there might be some violence, and of course there is the leftovers of the militias that have been helping both sides, either in the east or in the west. And of course all of that, no country will be free of violence if militias, especially weaponized militias, are still there. So let's hope for the best, and let's take this step as a very optimistic one for the resolution of Libya. And hopefully the process from now on will be only political with no violence. But I do expect some violence and some allegations from other left out figures who aspire to be in that new government. But let's hope for the unity of Libya for the time being, and for getting out the militias and the leftover of the militias in Libya according to the UN peace process.
All right, Sarah, we appreciate those insights. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Sarah Kira, live in Cairo. You're watching Africa Live. We're taking a short break. Coming up, the UN warns a stalled peace deal in South Sudan is a threat to the country's stability.
Nature is essential for humans to exist, from pollinating our crops to stabilizing our climate. But our natural world is under serious threat. Humanity's influence on the decline of nature is so great that around 1 million species already face extinction. One continent, Africa, is trying to halt the trend. There are some special people doing some incredible work on the ground to help conserve the continent's fauna, flora, and cultural heritage, whilst introducing these riches to the rest of the world.
Again, he can hold in guns. Machine guns from police forces towards the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Welcome back. Let's now focus on that story on China's 2 sessions, and the country's top political advisors have wrapped up nearly a week of deliberations on proposals that cover areas from the economy to legislative reforms. Let's bring in Ovigwe Egwegu, policy advisor at Development Reimagined, a pioneering international development consultancy, to discuss this further. Ovigwe, hopefully you can hear me now.
Very well.
Beautiful. Right. So having followed the whole 2-session gathering, to what extent did Africa feature?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So Africa featured to a significant extent. For Africa, the event is a significant indicator, for understanding, China-Africa relations in the, in the immediate to medium term. And if you recall the press conference in which the press conference on the sidelines of the National People's Congress, in which Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi actually provided insight into Chinese foreign policy agenda. He made mention to Africa in several key areas, referencing African industrialization, Chinese readiness and support, to support African integration and participation in global economic space, and also peace and stability. Also mentioned very crucial issues like pandemic recovery and all of that. So it's very, very important, given that last year was the 20th anniversary of the FOCAC, that's the Forum on Africa, or China-Africa Cooperation. And 2020 was also a trial year for China-Africa relations, and it showed its resilience, given several areas of cooperation, particularly in mitigating the COVID-19 pandemic. So it is very, very instructive, that Foreign Minister Wang Yi used this opportunity of the two sessions to make reference to China's readiness to continue to support African countries to overcome in the pandemic, because to a large extent Africa is still suffering from the impact of the pandemic, although not more on the health side, but very much on the economic side. Okay, so what agenda does the two sessions set for China-Africa cooperation moving forward? Very, very clear. In that same press conference, he made reference to FOCAC, which is coming up later on this year, in Senegal, and says it's an opportunity, for China and Africa to work together to improve, public health. But very specifically, you have to understand that for African countries, the priority is COVID-19 pandemic recovery, particularly economic, as well as the AFCFTA we just came into force in January 2021. So it is very interesting and also very encouraging to see that there are very clear areas in that speech or in that conference, and in that conference, press conference with Foreign Minister Wangi, that really connects to Africa's priorities right now. Because when he was mentioning about China's support and readiness towards overcoming the pandemic, that's a welcome statement for Africa, because vaccine accessibility, vaccine affordability, and vaccine availability, these are still issues that African countries are still dealing with. And we also see that Chinese support. Currently, China is supplying COVID-19 vaccines to 35 African countries. And that has really gone a long way in helping African countries to really control the pandemic, from that health perspective. Recall in December last year also, there was that crucial, memorandum of understanding between the African Union, and the Chinese side on the AFCFTA BRI link-up. So, and that AFCFTA BRI link-up is very important because African economies will benefit greatly from connecting their economies with the Belt and Road Initiative that is proving to be a success, all over the world, and really provides a lot of opportunities for economic growth, for African countries. So if we continue to double down on these areas of cooperation, which was highlighted in the speech and aligns with Africa's interests and priorities right now, the future looks really bright for China-Africa cooperation. All right, thank you very much for that. Ovigwe Egwegu, live for us there in Abuja. The Republic of Congo is set to receive COVID-19 vaccines donated by China. The jabs made by Sinopharm have been loaded and are now on the way to the African nation. China's ambassador said in February that 100,000 doses of vaccines would be donated to the country. Beijing has said that Chinese vaccines are being provided free to over 60 countries. It has also agreed to provide 10 million doses to the global vaccine sharing program, COVAX. To Mauritius now, where the country has entered a 15-day national lockdown following a rise in COVID-19 cases since the start of the month. On Tuesday, the Indian Ocean island nation recorded 5 new cases, bringing the total of new cases to 15. Authorities suspect the surge of cases could be as a result of a second wave. The worst affected regions are in the towns of Vakwas, Phoenix and Kurepip. The announcement has prompted panic buying of supplies and long queues at the petrol stations. Mauritius has confirmed 641 cases and 10 deaths since the pandemic started a year ago. The Nigerian government says it is set to start the mass trial of about 5,000 suspected Boko Haram insurgents across the country. But criticism from top global bodies like the United Nations Human Rights Agency have emerged about authorities failing to prioritize the trial before now. CGTN's Philly Hazard tells us more from Abuja, Nigeria's capital.
Still bearing the scars from the attack, Callistus Amalu is a survivor of Boko Haram bomb blast in 2014, which killed nearly 100 people in Abuja. He says it's painful for him that no one has been held accountable and claims there's been a lack of government support.
I affected my business, everything that I'm doing crumpled down. And since then, nobody come to my aid. And we have not seen the person that's responsible for a group of people that's responsible for that thing. So since then, I'm not happy.
The Nigerian government began trying suspected Boko Haram members in 2017, and so far, nearly 300 of them have been found guilty and more than 500 released. And this time, the government is set to prosecute about 5,000 of them, the largest singular trial since 2009 when the war against terrorism began in Nigeria. But experts say it has taken too long to prosecute the suspects, and they are entitled to a trial rather than continued detention.
You jail people since 2009 till now. So what's the justice for them, right? It's over 2009 to now, it's over 10 years, you know. So what's the justice for them, even in terms of their rights to getting access to justice and all that? So it's a muddled up process, and I really don't know how this is going to work out and play out, even in the law courts itself.
Human Rights Watch also says with the years of delay, the trial process may experience shortcomings. However, experts say it's better late than ever.
First of all, it can help restore the confidence of the government in Nigeria and also the international community. I don't think Nigerians are very confident of the government right now in terms of fighting terrorism, but this could be a step towards achieving that faith.
The country's Legal Aid Council says the 5,000 suspects are currently being interviewed and profiled to find out the nature of the crimes they are accused of committing.
And the Justice Ministry says it's doing its best to ensure the Boko Haram suspects will be given fair hearing at the trials and lawyers will be adequately provided to defend them.
Victims like Callistus hope that justice will be served. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
The United Nations mission in South Sudan says it is concerned about how long it's taking to roll out the peace deal. 5 factions in South Sudan signed the 2018 peace deal to end 6 years of conflict, but forming a new government has already taken a year and the task still hasn't been completed. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
The 2018 South Sudan's peace deal set out a way forward. Various armed groups were supposed to be unified, retrained and redeployed before a unity government could be formed. Up until now, the armies have been in training camps. The building of a national army, police and other organized forces is supposed to be happening at the moment. That exercise has not begun.
We still have many issues that are not yet in fruition. Particularly the county commissioners, we still wait for those to be appointed. They're critical appointments in the current state of subnational violence, the amount of subnational violence going on. We've also got, of course, the issues around the constitution, the unification of forces. All of these important parts of the peace process are still to be resolved.
The peace deal also stipulates a number of economic reforms so that South Sudan's central bank can become fully independent. The peace agreement also provides that the Ministry of Finance should be transparent and the National Audit Chamber should be independent and carry out its work without political interference. None of those reforms have begun. The conflict isn't over, though. Armed opposition groups are still locked in battle with the government. Talks with the groups was being held in Rome but were halted because of COVID-19 restrictions. The new unity government says it has resumed talks with the groups in Kenya this week.
The spirit was actually encouraging. There was friendliness, a feeling of trying to get solutions to the problem of our people. We felt that we are all one people of the Republic of South Sudan.
The UN says it is concerned that the elections scheduled at the end of the 3-year transitional period might be delayed, which could lead to more violence in the country. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Nearly 1 in 3 women globally have experienced physical or sexual violence. That's according to a new report by the World Health Organization. The report is the largest study on violence against women, drawing data from 161 countries collected between 2000 and 2018. The report puts intimate partner violence as being the most prevalent form of violence against women globally. Intimate partner violence affects over 641 million women. Sub-Saharan Africa is among regions with the highest prevalence rates for women aged between 15 and 49. The report, though, does not reflect the ongoing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, here in Kenya, gender-based violence has increased during the coronavirus pandemic. One NGO has been helping survivors of gender-based violence to rebuild their lives. Cham Gono reports.
Nairobi's crowded informal settlements have been cited as thriving ground for abusers by women rights organizations. Accessing aid or where to report sexual exploitation and violence can be difficult in these places.
My partner used to beat me up every day. He once broke my hand and injured my back. I'm still nursing the injuries. He's a policeman, so he always gets protection whenever I report him.
On the streets of the Kenyan capital, another gender-based violence survivor struggles to eke out a living.
My husband began beating me during the start of COVID-19. I left the house and started living on the streets. I have 2 kids. This one here is 1 year old. The older one goes to school and is a 3-year-old.
Gender-based violence takes on numerous forms. Intimate partner violence is one of the most common, which includes physical, sexual, or even emotional abuse. It is an issue of gender inequality, as an expert from the Center for Rights Education and Awareness crew explains.
Household conflict normally arises as a result of sharing of minimal resources that we have in the households. So those limited resources, at times when the pressure is high on the husband or the perpetrator, that is where all this happens.
And for that reason, divorce is not a solution for many victims who remain financially dependent on their abusers.
Stigma is very rampant. I've gone through a lot. People throw insults at you. So many people despise me. Having a dignified life is what I look forward to.
Giving survivors a voice has been part of the mission for the Center for Rights Education and Awareness. More than 3,700 women living in informal settlements across Kenya have benefited from their services.
When these women are having some income that are able to sustain them, we are going to realize that the survivor herself is going to have a dignified life, and at some point she's going to have some choices to make.
When one is getting married, you're looking for a shoulder to lean on. But being beaten is not part of the affection. You need to know when the beating is enough and it's time to let go.
Most of the survivors, through their experience of abuse and empowerment, can see a different role for themselves in society. Cham Hono, CGTN.
Well, it's time now to catch up with the day's business news. Let's cross over to Uche for the latest.
Thank you, Peninah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. South African mining companies are set for a rebound through acquisitions. And Ghana's Nana Akufo-Addo promises to revive the economy as he begins his new term in office.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off with South Africa's mining sector. Now, deals amongst cash-flush mining companies are poised to pick up once COVID-induced uncertainties dissipate. According to analysts, miners are ready to expand through acquisitions, with resurgent demand and supply shortfalls driving up metals prices, and of course, company earnings to levels not seen for a decade. Here's Angelo Coppola looking at the South Africa mining sector.
The upbeat and positive situation for South African miners is one that the sector hasn't seen since 2015.
With the recovery of so many of the commodities and the prices, demand, supply and prices, we've seen many of our mining entities re-looking their exploration expenditure, apart from their maintenance capex, maybe expansionary capex happening. And as well as having a look at diversification, not just necessarily in the actual commodity that they're in already, going into different commodities and even going across the borders.
I think investors can take some solace from the fact that because of the commodity price levels that we're seeing, these miners are in a position where they're able to invest back into their businesses or sometimes through M&A, whilst also returning cash to shareholders. So at the moment, it's not a question of either or. In many cases, they're doing both.
But how attractive are local mines to foreign-based mining businesses?
What we've picked up from the international market as well, the interest is not necessarily so big, in the existing mines, of our many miners that we look after. However, for new greenfield opportunities in some of the energy minerals that we're seeing there, for example, like copper, sub-Saharan Africa, and including South Africa, is definitely, a target.
South African mines may be a little too expensive for some prospective buyers at the moment.
I think one deterrent is you look at the valuations or the market caps of some of these businesses. Several of them are up 2, 3, 4, 5-fold over a relatively short period of time. So I think that is somewhat of a deterrent. Although, again, on the other hand, relative to the cash flows that they're generating, the multiples are now lower than they were a few years ago.
Looking further afield, local and international investors will be looking at the rest of the continent.
We believe that there will be a re-look at the existing precious metals, for example. Base metals going to be very important. We see a very drastic increase in the demand for energy minerals.
The mining sector is set for a boom period, and the beneficiaries are going to be the mine management, the communities that they mine in, investors and shareholders. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's stay in South Africa. The economy is showing signs of a slow recovery, but it still has a long way to go before it can record solid growth. Fourth quarter GDP data shows that the economy grew at an annualized rate of 6.3% in the last 3 months of 2020. But of course, growth for the full year declined 7%. Here's Sumitru Naidu with the details.
South Africa, like most countries across the globe, suffered a massive blow to economic growth in 2020. But the country was already in a recession when COVID hit.
The truth of the matter is South Africa has been in a declining phase for over the last decade or so. So while we sort of see this positive, uptick in growth, at the end of the day, it's sort of resetting what was previous losses in the years to come, years before. So if you look at it in sort of that aspect, it's important to sort of keep looking ahead and get the right sort of structural transformations in place so we can actually look more towards a positive trajectory rather than just sort of recouping previous losses.
Annualized GDP rose 6.3% in the fourth quarter of 2020. 8 of the main sectors of the economy recorded growth. Manufacturing recorded a 21.1% gain, the largest contributor to GDP. Some economists agree this is an improved performance, but it's coming off a low base.
In 2019, the economy only grew by 0.9%. The previous year, you see considerably 1.5, 1.7 projections versus expectations. So you're finding that South Africa has really had a lackluster growth over the last few years, and this is not simply a COVID issue. And I think just to stress that the positive growth that we have had even before COVID wasn't sufficient in terms of quantum and in terms of rate of growth.
Finance declined slightly while mining slumped 1.4%. Household expenditure increased by 7.5% as consumers started spending again.
The average South African consumer is under severe pressure at the moment. So there's always this uncertainty that do we still have that previous sort of spending power that I'm going to forecast. Just to bear in mind that we're at a record level high unemployment figures at the moment and that the economy has still not fully recovered. So whilst we do see this rebound in expenditure, it will sort of be muted throughout 2021, given that the general pressure that households are under at the moment, and considering the fact that we are not out of the woods yet.
The gains that we're seeing in these GDP numbers are largely as a result of economic activity resuming following the hard lockdown. South Africa still faces the massive challenges it had before COVID. Economists believe that only once these issues are dealt with will we see any real growth in South Africa.
We are sitting at the worst annual fall of GDP since 1946. There's nothing to celebrate. What we can hope for is that this will show our policymakers and our economic cluster that we need an alternative. And I think that the data is telling us this. Regardless of ideological framework, quite clearly the development growth path that we're on is unsustainable. I think it's an opportunity for us to accept that whatever we have tried to do hasn't worked. And I think it's time for us to go back to the drawing board.
Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And heading to Ghana now, President Akufo-Addo has pledged to transform the country's economy. That's after it was battered by the coronavirus pandemic. Now, this is his top priority after winning a keenly contested election in December. Here's CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai with the details from Accra.
Hospitals will be designated.
President Akufo-Addo's State of the Nation address comes after Ghana's Supreme Court unanimously quashed a petition challenging his legitimacy. The court declared that the petition filed by opposition candidate John Mahama lacked merit. The president says his focus now is to revive the economy after a downturn caused by COVID-19.
Our overall economic growth rate for 2020 was reviewed downwards from 6.8% to 0.9%. This was done to reflect the impact of the pandemic. The fiscal responsibility rule of keeping a deficit within a threshold of 5% of GDP and the positive primary balance for every year was suspended in 2020 to enable fiscal operations to accommodate the impact of the pandemic.
Ghana has begun its COVID-19 vaccine rollout and wants to inoculate 20 million people by the end of the year. The president hopes to create more jobs to support the country's economic recovery.
Government expects economic activity, which has already picked up, to do so even further following the ongoing vaccination exercise and the easing of restrictions put in place to curb the effects of the disease. We expect GDP growth to rebound strongly this year to nearly 5%, above the IMF's 2021 January projection of 3.2% growth for Sub-Saharan Africa for 2021.
President Akufo-Addo's State of the Nation address has received mixed reactions from legislators.
I was particularly happy about the railway program and then the Buankra Inland Port, which of course many young people in Ashanti region are looking up to find jobs.
He's creating the impression that everything is all right, but even the developed countries are telling their people times are hard, we have to do things differently.
The president also outlined key infrastructure development he plans to undertake by the end of his mandate in 2024. It includes the expansion of roads across the country and improving access to healthcare delivery. President Akufo-Addo could struggle to get legislation passed during his second term in office due to Ghana's hung parliament. He will have to try and get support from the opposition party to make progress on key campaign pledges. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
And to some international news now. China says its 14th five-year plan will promote innovation when it comes to green and low-carbon development. In response, dozens of Chinese companies have now announced roadmaps to become carbon neutral. The first industrial park to meet that goal has been built in the capital, Beijing. Our Sunya is there.
It looks like a regular industrial park on the outside, but this gold-green technology facility is the country's first ever carbon-neutral compound. For all its 90,000 square meter range, the company that specializes in generating clean energy is employing many of its own products, from wind turbines to solar panels, and it offsets the remaining carbon emissions by buying carbon quotas in the country's expanding green exchange.
We've been exploring carbon-neutral solutions for a long time before 2021. Seeing that so many companies and industries have made it their goal, we wanted to be the first to complete and offer such solutions.
They're having smaller individual steps too. The compound encourages the use of electric cars as well as walking for its more than 3,000 staff, all part of its green energy plan.
We're putting forward carbon-neutral proposals at the two sessions, too. We hope to soon engage a batch of cities, industrial parks and villages that have put forward carbon reduction plans to try out various green measures and make them carbon-neutral models.
Many companies in China are already joining Goldwing in setting up their own botanic gardens and vegetable greenhouses to take in carbon dioxide, as all of China are working to meet the green goal of becoming carbon neutral by the year 2060. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but still to come on Global Business Africa. We'll bring you more on that deadly demonstration over access to higher education in South Africa. Of course, all that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. You're watching Africa Live. We've got plenty coming up, including this. Scientists concerned about increased volcanic activity on DRC's Mount Nyiragongo.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
Let's head to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Scientists studying the volcanic activity of Mount Nyiragongo have raised concerns over its rising magma levels. They are also worried that funding cuts, which are impeding their work, could put residents in the nearby city of Goma at greater risk. CGTN's Joy Kiruki Juma reports.
Mount Nyiragongo in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is roaring with volcanic activity. Volcanologist Honore Siraba measures changes in the size of the volcano's rim. The readings from his device contribute to an early warning system for potential eruptions. This is to avoid a repeat of a 2002 eruption that saw 250 people dead and 120 others rendered homeless. Siraba and his colleagues are, however, faced with a challenge. The World Bank has cut funding amid embezzlement allegations at the Goma Volcano Observatory.
If we don't do it regularly, we won't know where the crater is expanding. The more magma that goes up into the crater, the more it expands. We need to know where that is exactly, since even if the crater, as you can see, is already 1.03 kilometers, it's possible it's expanding on the other side. We have to know by how much it's expanding.
With empty coffers, Siraba and his team are unable to run remote sensors due to inability to pay for internet connection. Instead, they have to manually download data on memory cards during the now rare visits to the volcano.
I am 65 years old. I've been regularly climbing the volcano for 9 years, except in 2008 when I had an accident. But we actually have a passion for climbing this volcano and seeing how it evolves. We're very curious to see whether the Nyiragongo that erupted in 2002 will erupt again. We have to observe it so that we have enough data and can also train those who will come after us.
Siraba worries that volcanic activity observed in the last 5 years mirrors that in the years preceding the 1977 and 2002 eruptions. The population of Goma has also tripled to around 1.5 million in the last 20 years and could make an eruption more deadly. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in sports. Sporting activity.